Hello, welcome to Squirrel Tale. Today I have here Tom. He is going to be doing a demonstration on making a flint.
We're using Georgetown chert, which all flint is chert, but not all chert is flint. When it gets real glassy like this, pretty much like the English and French, that's when we call it flint. Now, I get my chert flint from Texas. It's Georgetown, Texas. It formed in a shallow sea during the Jurassic and forms like a geode. We find it's very stable, makes very good sparking gun flints. Now I make from that big rock I just was holding into what's called a blade core. And from the blade core, then I produce blades, and we make something that sparks to put the spark back in our sport. Now we do it 3 methods to make a blade. Now I might have to put my glasses on for this. We do direct, indirect, and issue stick indirect. Sorry about that. So direct is exactly what it sounds like. We take it, we support the material, and we strike it with a hammer. I use copper because steel was shattered. I'm basically using stone glass. So first I have to abrade it to strengthen the edges. And then we'll strike it and hopefully take a flake and or a blade off of the edge. And from that we're going to make a gun flint. So we're going to take copper because it won't shatter as easy. And we're going to take off hopefully a blade and not a flake. From that we can make a pretty nice gun flint. We're going to do one more, and then we're going to switch to the other method, which is called punch. That'll make a real fine gun flint right there. So we're going to jump right into the gun flint part, and then we'll do the punch in a moment. So what I use, these are chisels, and this is a file. The file is harder than the chisels, and I use copper. I make my own boppers out of plumbing caps, and they're lead filled. And they're antler because that's more ergonomic. I always use steel if I want to shear off a piece, because if I hit glass with steel, it's probably going to shatter. This is basically rock glass. Now I want to look for the best part of the blade, which is right here, right along here. So that's what I'm going to concentrate on making for my gun flint. Now everybody thinks I can get 2 gun flints out of this. I can get one really good one, or maybe 2 iffies. And if we're not breaking them, we're not making them. So we're hoping it goes right the first time. So by holding at an angle, I can make a nice taper. That's the taper we're talking about. When we turn it over, we need it, every time I take a piece of rock off of here, it curves. It's got a conchoidal fracture, which it basically means, like if you shoot a BB through a school window, it breaks out like this. That's a conchoidal fracture. We're trying to control that fracture and make it useful. What I do is angle it and take off small pieces. That's why if you look behind me, there's a screen to keep my debris in here. The gentleman with me, Mrs. Squirrel Tail, has some safety glasses on along with my safety glasses. So this is something you have to protect yourself a little bit. I'm going to take off controlled pieces. I'm trying to make it as flat as possible. There's a little curve still here that we're going to take out, and we're going to concentrate here, and that'll be a Thompson center size 5/8 gun flint. By angling it different ways, I get a different profile on the sides. Now that's still a little too big, but you can see where we're going here. Now I have to take off this bulb part here. We do that by turning it, just hitting along the edge there. You can see now I took the bulb out, and we'll go back to shaping. Use my German silver. Need a little more mass. Okay, now we have to find my sizing jig. Alright, we're going to wing that. We need it 5/8. So now I'm going to look here and see which is the best. So I have to take a little bit more off this side. Now this is not a big arm swing, it's just a little tap, tap, tap. All in the wrist. Clean that up. We'll go the other way. I'm using softer materials because it doesn't shatter the flint, or in this case, Texas chert. That's roughly a 5/8 or Thompson Center type flint. And we're going to see if it sparks at all. I think that might do. Now we had a request. Gentleman has what's called a wall gun. So we're going to take some much bigger shards because he needs 1 inch to 1 1/8, kind of like a brown bess, but a little bit bigger. So we're going to start with a substantially bigger. Now I didn't cover this, but a blade is twice as long as it is wide. When you start getting wider, we call that a flake. So if I called Mr. Squirrel Tail here a blade, he's tall and thin. I'm more like a flake because I'm kind of short and fat. And if we were doing Indian arrowheads, that would be your money right there. So we're going to start. We're going to take this part and make a wall gun because he wants it over 1 inch. A wall gun is basically a handheld cannon.
Should be a picture popping up right now of the gun it's for.
Yep, good. Now, I don't usually use a lot of steel because the steel is kind of brutal to the flint and it can shatter the whole project. We like to say if you're not breaking them, you're not making them. Copper actually bites into the material and pushes more than it shatters. And that's why we like using the copper. Now this is the Cortex because this forms in limestone, whereas in Europe it forms in chalk. It's all the same chemical. In America we call it chert. In Europe we call it flint, just because it formed in chalk. So I use American chert, and I get my chert in Texas because Texas supplies. And we have a wall gun, which is roughly 1 1/4 by 1 1/4 inch, and that's for Mr. Squirrel's friend who has a handheld cannon. So put that down. Now we're going to make a blade for a large siler, and we're going to use indirect. Okay. To make blades, I use a blade core. I start with the white rock we showed before. I shear off the top. I need a 90 or less, and then I take a punch and punch the top using a hammer. Now I have 3 types of hammers I use. The wood is soft, the moose antler is medium, and then I have a brass hammer which is hard. It depends on how much force. We're working with stone glass. You think of it as glass, you can't go wrong, because then you're less likely to shatter it. And yes, if we're making them, we're probably breaking them at some point. But what we're going to do is go to a slightly larger one. I need less than 90 degrees, preferably a flat top. This is going to be less than 90 degrees. I'm going to put a punch in this direction, race against my body so it doesn't step fracture. And that was a step fracture that came out instead of going down the curve. Now if you look at all these blade cores, they all curve in. That's the way the blades will always break. This is a fine example of that. You can see I struck it at the top and it curves. That's why I won't get a whole bunch of gun flints out of this. I'll get one really good one or two iffies. Iffies are if they break. If you get greedy, you don't get a lot of beautiful gun flints, you just get what I call iffies. Now what I have to do is I have to put it against my body in the leather to cushion the shock that I'm going to impart with the punch. Now I'm going to start with my soft hammer. Now you'll hear the difference when it breaks from when we just hit it. Actually, that time we got good and lucky. We got a clean flake. That's a flake because it's wide, but that's going to make a very fine gun flint right there because it's a very straight edge. So that'll be a very fine gun flint. Now we're going to try to make you a blade, which is like Mr. Squirreltail there, tall and skinny and sharp. So what I'm doing now is called a braiding. I have to abrade the edges to weaken these two sections, but also strengthen this section. If I don't do that, it's going to do what we call crushing. And it's not like the kids say crushing it is not a good thing in flint knapping. Now I first have to take off this little piece here with a flake to make it less than 90. So we're going to go direct. We have a flake. Now if you're an arrowhead maker, that's your money. Right there. I can make a pretty fine gun flint out of it, but it's going to be thin and may be subject to fracture. Now I have my flat here, less than 90, I should be able to drive a nice blade off of here with the punch. We hope. We're dealing with God-given material. Every material's a little bit different. I like to say God makes a rock, I just shape it. Now we're going to come in here, we're looking for this, less than 90, we're going to go down this ridge, and then we're going to try to take this ridge also, because that's less than 90 right there. And we're going to try to make blades instead of flakes. Sometimes we can, sometimes we're just flake all day. So I'm taking the punch here, and it's rounded, and I'm setting it about 1/8 of an inch in, at an angle towards me, and I'm pushing it with the leather in my body, so this imparts a controlled fracture that will come out like a blade. Okay. Now I'm using the soft hammer again, and if it gets stubborn, we'll use the hard hammer. Now all this is very fragile, so we're going to smooth that. And you can see, I'm not sure, does it show how translucent it is on the camera?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I have to kind of knock that back a little bit, and that one's a little bit curved. So we'll find the best part of that. We're going to do one more and see if we can't get a straighter one. So we're going to switch to a bigger. Okay, I just have to do a little direct on here, and then we're going to try to take this as a blade. Again, direct. Okay, that's what they call crushing it. And that's not what we really want, but it did affect what I'm doing. So I should be able to do this. Abrading again, this is sandstone. And believe it or not, the sandstone is the same material as this. This is micro pieces of that with a binder of iron indoor lime. Kind of cement. Natural cement. Again, abrade it. Abrading makes the edge stronger. I'm going to hit one more time to try to knock this little ridge off. You'll hear the difference when it goes. That will be a beautiful wall gun flint. That will be a very good wall gun flint. I'm very happy with that because now I have my less than 90. I should be able to run a couple of nice blades off of here. Actually be a little conchoidal, which is that little dip here, is what we really prefer to make blades because that's much less than 90. Now I'm weakening it in between. And if you look on the floor, you will see a lot of debris. So canvas down, boots, safety gear on. A lot of guys do it in their shorts. I won't. I advise everybody to put a little leather on, and it'll save your clothing a little bit. Okay, you'll hear the difference when it goes. And we have a blade. And that will make a fine Thompson center, our lineman rifle, and the part that's useful is right between my thumbs. Everybody thinks I could get 2 or 3 out there. No, I'll get one very good one or 2 iffies if he doesn't break. So, if you hear this, it's glass. It's stone glass. You hear that?
Yep.
You're working. If you have the mindset you're working with glass, you will be much more successful. Now this just set up for a beautiful blade here and a beautiful double-sided blade here. You just have to abrade it first. We're going to do one more blade and then we're going to go back to the fun part, which is making the actual guns flint. So we're going to take this one, and this one, what we're looking at here, is going right down this ridge. Hopefully it comes all the way down because they always break in a curve. And that's why if you find something in your yard that's pyramid shaped, it has a little bit of curve to it, there's probably an Indian that was doing exactly the same thing I'm doing. And I actually found one in my yard that's there, and it's probably 500 years old. Because we moved the Indians out of here about 500 years ago. Now, what I'm doing is I'm putting the punch here and angling it out. The force wants to go this way, the blade wants to fracture this way, and what we're going to do, we're going to strike it here. It's going to curve around and hopefully go this way. Now if it goes out like this way, that'll be a step fracture. I won't have nice things to say for a few minutes. That's working with natural materials. And this is moose antler. Moose Arauca is the best. It's just, what can we say? It's sturdier. You can do it with whitetail.
Oh, beautiful.
Okay. Now, if you hold this up to the light, you'll see all the edges are translucent. We're working with stone glass. The chemical formula for this material, which is flint, chert, is the same formula for your windshields, your eyeglasses, your window panes. We just make that hardness of 5. The chert flint is hardness of 7, diamonds are 10. So, the first step you do if you find a rock, you want to see if it works well for gun flint, try to scratch a piece of glass. Then you take a file and you try to make some sparks. And what we're talking about is taking a... I'll have to find my striker. But I suggest a file with the safe edge. Strike it if it sparks. Then you want to see if you can cleave it into useful shapes. What I'm doing is cleaving it into useful shapes. Again, we take it like that, it curves down. We have something we now can make a gun flint. This will be a very fine wall gun flint. And these smaller ones will be very fine gun flints. And we're going to take this one right now and make a large siler style gun flint. course, now I find the striker. So, what we're talking about, you pick up a rock, you don't know if they'll make a good, you find an edge that's semi-sharp, and you see if it sparks. If it sparks, you're halfway there. Now you have to see if it cleaves. I have a piece of quartzite over there. You can't cleave it in way, shape, or form. But if you had a wet saw, you could cut it into German agate type gun flints. You just would need a wet saw. So we're going to go from the blade core now to the blades and make gun flints. And that's the blade core. Flat on top, curved around the edges. If you find something like this in your backyard, it's usually about the size of a small pyramid. You might have had Indians making exactly what I'm making. And this was their craftsman toolkit. They could do a whole elk or deer with that. And, okay, we made this blade versus a flake. Again, a blade is twice as long as it is thick. This is a flake that would make a wonderful arrowhead or spear point. That is going to make a wonderful 3/4 or large size gun flint. And because of the way it has a taper here, it'll be a French style. It's not the color, it's the way it was stamped is how it determines French or English. Now we're going to take a copper bopper, and that's just antler, lead filled, give it a little mass. And these are brick workers chisels that I use in my stump, just because they're more durable. Now what we're doing there is we're producing a taper on the side. Now I'm looking for the best part of this blade, and right here between my thumbs is going to be the best part. There's a bulb of percussion here that we really don't like, that little rounded piece. And I'll show you a better piece. That's the bulb of percussion here, that hump. We don't really like that in our locks. So we want to go to the flatter part here, or in this one, it's right here. And this is going to be a very fine gun flint. So we're going to get rid of that bulb of percussion. The only time I use steel is when I would shear it off. And you can see that's a very violent action. It's like hitting your windshield with a hammer. It's going to shatter. We're going to go back to the copper. We're going to angle this so I get a nice taper. Then we're going to look again to see what we have. And if you notice, there's a lot of debris flying around. So you want a safe area. Now, you see this here? That I have to take my measuring jag, be right back, that I make up, whoops, 3/4, 5/8, 7/8. Those are the most common. So I fit it in there to see which one is going to fit the best. Okay, so that's going to be a little short of a 3/4, but I'll still work in a large siler. And we're going for this part of the blade right through here. Now, some people get upset when they see this part, but what I'm doing is just evening it out. It's still all sparks. We're going to show you even on not sharp edge, so that it still will spark. Now we're going to look again and find the best part, which is still over here. We're going to taper it. Copper pushes before it fractures it. That's why we're using copper. And when I have to switch the heavier hammer or the German steel, it's just because I need a little more momentum to achieve the same thing. And it's all wrist action. Now we're getting our taper on the sides here and here. It's starting to look like what you want to put in your lock. We have to go a little bit smaller. That's our jag. Now I like to be a little bit bigger than the 3/4, just because that way you can move it back and forth wherever it fits better. I also can make a big rock smaller. I can't make a small rock bigger. So I always can take off a little bit more for my customer. And that's about finished. You put that in your siler, and you probably get several good shots. And the way we sharpen them is I never suggest you whack them in your gun. You have a tumbler that has a square just like that. If you hit steel, to flint, to steel, that's going to round off. That's your safety. Take it out, take a skin pad, whoops, a skin pad. Kind of like that movie said, get a skin pad before you cut all your fingers off. Turn it over, find the taper that fits best, and take a piece of antler. I don't care if you run it over with a Buick or shoot it, but get yourself a piece of antler, and now I can microflake the edge. You can see the little flakes coming off and the little serrations I just put on that. Now some people don't like the serrations, so you come back with your antler and just roll it on the side. Now I've done that a lot because the antler is worn down, and this antler used to be square at the back.
Wow.
Yeah, I've done this a little while. Now, when that doesn't work, this is copper wire you use for grounding your aerial and or your lightning rod. They sell it by the foot. You drill 1/8 hole, a little hot melt glue. I suggest 4 inches or more of antler, and then we're even going to do the back, which isn't even the working edge, to show you can get a little bit more purchase power with the copper. I'm going to get my big thumb out of the way, and you can take bigger flakes. The idea is you're spending a lot of money on your gun flints. If you take micro flakes off, it's going to be sharp. That's how the Indians sharpen their things. You want it to last as long as possible. I'm taking micro flakes versus a 1/4 inch flakes. If you take 1/4 inch flakes and you have a 3/4 inch gun flint, it's not going to last very long.
No.
If you take micro flakes, you're going to have a good sparker, and you're also going to have it a lot longer. Now, my suggestion to everybody is when you find a gun flint that works very well in your gun, take out a white card, trace it with a sharp pencil, and every time you go to buy or have gun flints made, pull out that card and say, I want them like that. Now, this is kind of a French style because it's got a double taper and it's got a flat across the top. The English like to make theirs what I call fatbacks. They're squared off and they're much angled. There's no real difference between blonde and English. It's the same formation. It's just it has impurities that would make it yellow and or black, and it's exactly the same material because it was the same formation formed at the same time. France, they had something that turned it amber. England is probably some sort of iron oxide turned it black. Texas had something that turned it gray. I'm an old man. I don't like brunettes or redheads. I like the gray-haired ladies now. And these are my gray-haired ladies. So that is a Georgetown, Texas chert, which is flint also. And that will spark a long time. I have one gentleman that says he's well over 100 on one rock.
Wow.
Yeah. I can't guarantee you that. God makes a rock, I just shape it. Any questions?
Nope.
These are Kevlar gloves. I always have perfect right gloves, but can you see my fingers?
Yeah.
On this side, you are going to go through a lot of gloves. Get glass worker gloves. You will save a lot on Band-Aids. Is there anything else I can show you or do for you guys? Or
Nope.
Have a wonderful day.
Yep.
That's also yours. So, to recap, we start with this. We make this, which translates into blades, which, may I have one of your gun flints? And that's the end product. So when you start out, if you get 20% good, you're doing very well. After 7 years, I'm getting about 80% return.
Wow.
And I'm not as expert as some people. So that's where we're going. Have fun. And Mr. Squirrel Tail, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Chuck Dixon always had time for me when I got started in muzzle loading, even when I was using a cap gun. And he inspired me to build this Schimmel, which is our local claim to fame in Pennsylvania. This is one of my Georgetown Flints, ready to go. I think that'll work.
Yes.
And I'm going to back up so you can see. That's just called a barn rifle or a Schimmel. No butt plate. Chuck Dixon, who passed a few years ago, was always kind to me at Dixon's muzzleloader shop, and I built this in honor of his memory.